As the Colorado Buffaloes took the number one spot in the transfer rankings, over the past couple of days, there have been some schools that have been able to pick up some players and have ultimately knocked Colorado down to number 3. But Buff fans, no worries, no need to fear, because Colorado is looking at some additional big-time recruits that are actually going to be on campus this weekend. And we got to kind of talk about it, break it down, talk about maybe who you guys are excited for, and then potentially, again, players that maybe Colorado should be looking at. And I think there's a couple. So this weekend, Coach Prime, of course, is bringing more players on campus and potentially trying to now shore up that defense a little bit. Potentially looking at some defensive linemen, specifically defensive ends on the edge. So one of the first players that he's bringing in is wide receiver Xavier Weaver from the University of South Florida. Over the past couple of seasons for the South Florida, Xavier Weaver has actually had some pretty nice production for the Bulls. In 2021, he had 41 receptions for 715 yards, only 2 touchdowns. But in 2022, he had 53 receptions for 718 yards and 6 touchdowns. Now, if you notice, he had to maybe get a little more receptions to get similar to the same yards. So his average went down from 17.4 to 13.5. But ultimately, hey, if you're Colorado, you need weapons on the outside for Deion Sanders. And Xavier Weaver, he's definitely a guy that could potentially bring that weapon and that piece to the Buffs. But we're also going to talk about maybe a couple other wide receivers at the end of the video that I think you guys should maybe keeping your eyes on, and potentially guys that I think Coach Prime could be targeting. Additionally, he's bringing on some pretty big-time edge rushers, and the first one is Taylor Upshaw from Michigan. Now, we have talked about him before, and I think there is some really mutual interest between Colorado and Taylor Upshaw. Taylor Upshaw hasn't had a ton of production while he's been at Michigan. I think he's been averaging about 48 total tackles during that time. It looks like about 5.5 sacks and only 1 interception. But Taylor Upshaw, being a senior, 6'4", 255 pounds, I think Michigan actually has him at the linebacker position, but I think Upshaw would rather play the edge. If Coach Prime and the staff would like to adopt something similar to what Brent Venables down at Oklahoma likes to run in terms of the cheetah position, Taylor Upshaw would be a great player to potentially play that for Colorado. But if you get him and he just solely plays the edge position, that's nice too, because we've talked about the Colorado Buffaloes needing to get guys that can fight in the trenches for you. Taylor Upshaw is a guy that he's played Big Ten football, which when we talk about some of the most dominant football, some of the most powerful football in college, the Big Ten is, if not the best, the second best in terms of what we talk about in those standards. And so getting a guy from a school like Michigan, not even just, a Northwestern or Purdue in the Big Ten, you're getting one from the top 2 or 3 schools in that conference in Michigan. I think that's just big in general. And you're getting a guy that is tenured, he's senior, he could bring some leadership to that locker room, which is definitely something that everybody knows you need at some point or another. They're also looking at the edge rusher, Jordan Dominic. Now, Jordan Dominic actually has experience in the ACC, playing for Georgia Tech, and then now at his most recent school in the SEC, the Arkansas Razorbacks. So again, another thing that you like about this guy is he's played in multiple conferences, and he's played in, some people would say the best conference in all of college football. And during his time at Arkansas and Georgia Tech, he's had nothing short of tremendous production. In 2019, 25 total tackles. 2020, 35 total tackles. 2021, 38 total tackles. In 2022, 34 total tackles. I think in his career, we're looking at 11, 15, 16 and a half sacks, which that's tremendous. You want somebody that can get to the quarterback, and this is somebody that can get to the quarterback. He has forced, it looks like 6 forced fumbles in his career, and he's recovered about 3 of those. So this is a guy that not only gets to the quarterback, but he's a ball hunter as well, right? He gets that ball out. So another guy that I think, honestly, if you had a choice between the two, I think you want Jordan, because Jordan has, I think, the best production out of the two that you're looking at. And this past season, he had a tremendous season for Arkansas. I mean, 7.5 sacks this season, 19 solo tackles, and 34 total tackles. This is the guy that you want on your team. Additionally, they have the running back Micah Bernard coming in, who's from Utah. He's rushed for more than about 500 yards and had more than 250 receiving yards each of the last 2 seasons for Utah. He's about 6 foot, 202 pounds. This would be a great addition to getting, as well as Kavase Smoke, because we know that Kavase Smoke is a senior, so you're going to need to go ahead and start bringing in running backs that could be here for the long haul, and Micah Bernard, you guys could have at least probably another 2 years out of. So you like what you potentially see out of him from a production standpoint, and again, playing from a team that's in conference, right, maybe he can give you a little bit of a competitive advantage over the Utah Utes when you go play them, because he knows what they like to do. He knows their schemes. So that's maybe a little bit important as well. And so you might be asking me, well, hey, what happened to Elijah Hawk, right? The defensive lineman out of Western Michigan. You know, ultimately, it's like it doesn't really fit a whole lot in what Coach Prime wants to do. And that's okay, because sometimes you're going to hear names be thrown out. You're going to get 5-star guys that enter the portal, and they just don't fit what you want to do as a team, as a culture, or whatever. And so you move on from those players, and you go look at maybe some of these 3 or 4-star guys. And ultimately, if you have a guy that is able to go in there and develop that 3 and 4-star talent, then you really shouldn't be worried about missing out on some of those 5-star guys that might be in the portal. But looking at maybe some guys that potentially Colorado and Coach Prime could be looking at, and definitely I think they will give a call to. The first one is the 4-star offensive tackle from Georgia that just entered the transfer portal, Jacob Hood. This is a guy that, you know, I think personally, it's a position of need for Colorado on the offensive line. You need guys that are going to be able to go battle in the trenches with you. And this is a guy that has played in the SEC. He's played against some of the best defensive line talent. He's 6'8", 342 pounds, just another massive human being. And again, you need to protect your star quarterbacks and potentially maybe future quarterbacks coming in. This is a guy that can do that for you. Another guy that I think potentially you guys should be looking at, and we've talked about that wide receiver from USC that ended up transferring to Wisconsin, but USC had another portal entry, and that was Kyle Ford, the 4-star wide receiver. Kyle Ford, 6'3", 220 pounds. He was a top 40 player in the country. Listen, he had a body that is NFL ready. So this is a guy that you know can hit the field, and with the right development could potentially be a 2nd or 3rd round pick. And, 247 actually has him compared to Juju Smith-Schuster, who it's actually kind of funny, was at USC. So it's funny that they would compare him to a guy that is at USC, but to each his own. Those are just 2 guys that I think they could be looking out for. And then we've talked about the Georgia guys that are already in the portal, and maybe even more Georgia guys that are potentially going to be in the portal. You've got Ryland Goad, the 4-star tight end. I believe Eric Gilbert is still in the portal. Yes, he is, the 5-star tight end as well. And then Georgia had another 5-star safety, I believe it was a safety, into the portal, and that's going to be a position of need, I think, for the Colorado Buffs going in the next season, right? How are you going to be able to stabilize that secondary room past your star in Travis Hunter? And then also, how are you going to be able to develop the linebackers? That back 7 is going to be completely important for the Colorado Buffs and this defense. It doesn't just come down to the defensive line. So we will definitely have to keep our eye on that and just kind of see where Coach Prime goes from here. But I want to hear from you guys. What do you think about the Colorado Buffs transfer class so far? And who do you want to see Coach Prime go into the portal and take next?